Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Tuesday Live with your hosts, Jen and Joe.
What is up, everybody?
We are Creative Finance Playbook, and this week we are talking all about how you can get paid to buy real estate. That's right. We have this amazing strategy that we buy on terms and we also sell on terms. And we're going to break down what that even means in the next hour. So if you are live with us, come and let us know where you're hanging out from, where you're investing. If you have questions that we're chatting, drop them down in the comments below. Your question might get answered live. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and post your questions there too. We might be able to chat about them next time. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, we go live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, but we also have other content on there as well and on Apple and Spotify. So if you're not following us, go give us a little subscribe and follow.
We're all those places and then some.
Yeah. So today is really exciting because we've been doing this since 2017 when we first decided to purchase real estate without having to go to banks, without having our credit pulled, and honestly, with little to no money out of pocket, other than some closing costs, which in the scheme of buying a house, guys, it's not that much.
So buckle up because today we're going to have some great stuff to share. Okay. And works, I got to say, everywhere. There's not a place around the country where this doesn't work. So once we discovered this strategy, because many of you might know, some might not, but Jen and myself, when we first got started, we were buying houses in the suburbs back when the market was slowing down in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 in upstate New York, in Rochester. And when we first got started, we were buying these houses in the suburbs that were fixer-uppers. We would remodel them, make them beautiful. Neighborhood that loved it. We'd put in a renter. Then we'd go to the bank and refinance it. And that's where we would pull our money back out of the deal. Plus, there's times where we could get extra cash too. So once we started doing that strategy, now it's called BRRRR, and it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. That's what that stands for. We were doing that, but it was kind of slow. And I had a full-time job. And Jen was trying to manage contractors while being a stay-at-home mom with 2 little ones. And when you're managing contractors in a full remodel, that's a lot, and a lot of things come up. So, but we were doing it because that's what
honestly, the biggest pain in the neck hassle was all the paperwork for the banks
to refinance out of it, right?
Yep.
So once we were doing that and we were moving along, chugging along, but back in 2016, when we were refinancing out of one of our next properties, this is when the bank says that we're going to have to cut you off at 10 mortgages. So at 10, beyond that, you're going to have to figure something else out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do I go to a different bank? What do we do? And so this is when we started learning about what's called creative finance, which is a big umbrella term. You might hear it of different forms. It's a form of seller financing where you're not going to banks, you're not using your credit and things like that. So when we started watching like all the Google and YouTube videos back in 2016, I remember like talking to you about it and you're like, well, what's terms?
Yeah. I remember even trying to like wrap my head around what it even meant, because to me, it was so foreign of a concept. Like I had already gone to a bank. I purchased my own house before we met. And it just seemed like, well, that's what you do. That's what people, and only those other people, with all that money can go in and invest and have lots of rental properties. Like you knew the names around our small city at the time, Rochester, of like who owned most of the apartment complexes and that kind of thing. And, honestly, it was just a bit of it was a big mind shift for me to like understand that anybody could do this. And it just takes some education and knowing exactly how to talk to sellers, how to structure your deals, how to do your paperwork. But really at the end of the day, if you want to create really great wealth for your family, and then on top of that, like a little bit more of time freedom where you're controlling your schedule, and then you're helping people that are in some situations that, traditionally, like they might not be able to sell their house right now.
We've got some we're working on today, or we were just talking before our podcast right here in Florida. Mm-hmm. So when we discovered this thing called terms, we're like, wait a second, and I started doing like the deep dive. I'm like, honey, without using our credit, without using a bank, and really not a lot of money, we could actually get paid to buy real estate. Mm-hmm. How to buy real estate without using your own banks and credit, and how to get paid to do it. Well, that's what today's episode is all about.
Yeah, because once we did do all the burring, we didn't know what it was called, and we had a couple properties, and we were just your traditional landlords with a payment, to the bank every month, making this loan that we had burred out of whatever the house, and then we have got our renter. So the cash flow was minimal, and if a repair was needed, like it ate up any reserves that there might have even been. And so we realized pretty quickly, like, okay, something's got to change.
Well, and that's what happens, because when you pay your payment to the bank, you're paying your property taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying for any repairs that need to get done to the property. So if there's a leaky faucet and that costs, a few $100s to go replace it on emergency, like that could be really expensive, and it could add up quick. And a couple small things, even on a fully remodeled, like I was so mad when that faucet went, because that was like not even that old. It was a brand new Moen faucet. And we installed it for the shower. The company that comes over and says, well, it's under warranty, just the part, but we'd have to send out the part for it to be covered under warranty, or we could just put a new one in today. It's like $600. I'm like, this is like, I feel like I just icky, like I was getting robbed on it.
Right.
So not only that too, at the end of the year, once you do it all up and you add up a couple small things, you really don't get to make a whole lot of money. One repair could ruin a whole year.
Yeah. And I just feel like it's not really spoken about enough that there is a way to really make money in your real estate investing journey early on. It's just, you have to do a couple of key things, and we're going to get into those.
Yeah. So the key to us getting started in this process was learning how to buy real estate with Creative Finance. This is where we are working directly with the seller. Now, we have bought properties that were listed on the MLS, but we weren't reaching out to that agent. Most likely, the seller reached out to us because the house was on the market and it wasn't selling, and we were able to make that deal. However, our favorite deals, our best deals, are the ones where we're in direct contact with the seller. And there's a whole long list of ways to do that. We have like a list of like 25 different ways or something like that to get in front of sellers. And it could be door knocking, cold calling, Facebook, like we talk about all the time, direct mail, Google ads. I mean, there's a whole long list of different things you can do, right? But the name of the game is to get in front of sellers. And after we kind of figured out a couple strategies, we went in on it and took action. And I think that was the first step, is we found out what we wanted to do. We hired a coach who guided us. We started taking some action. We started getting these creative finance deals. So a lot of the deals that we're buying are with $100 down. We're going to pay both sides of closing costs, right? I'm going to have to put an insurance policy on there, but now I own a piece of real estate. And if you're able to do that and cover two sides of closing costs, and depends on the property, guys. So if you're financing $1 million property or higher, and where we live in Florida, that's like an average property. It works in all different price ranges. Okay.
You just have to know your cost of entry, and that's going to vary, state to state, and then, deal to deal. So in New York, yes, we've done $100 down to sellers, but then if the numbers work out, then we've also got a deal that we're doing that they do need a little bit of money down because they've already moved to Florida. And they had some expenses, but we are working real hard on our dispo team, and dispo just means we've got somebody in place helping us find our tenant buyer. So we're going to get a person that's going to come and move into a property with a large non-refundable option. And so the money that we're shelling out on the deal to buy, ideally, we're going to get that money right back. And that's kind of this really awesome way of helping the seller, helping a want-to-be homeowner, so a tenant buyer, and then us as an investor, we're able to put some money out on a deal, but then get all, if not more or most, that money back right away. And then with true cash flow, because the tenant buyer, as if you've been listening to us for a while here, they take care of all maintenance and repairs. We treat them like a homeowner. So they're the ones putting in, a new hot water tank, or if something they don't like it, they fix it. If they don't like the flooring, they're putting a new carpet, or they're changing out a tile. I don't know. We let them do what they want with their house. So I think that's really, there's so many different ways that we are able to help people in that regards.
Yeah. And when we first got started, we weren't on really expensive properties. They were pretty inexpensive, to be quite honest with you.
No, Haddon was what?
And you're talking $80,000 house. And this was a house in the suburbs of Rochester, New York. So there are some markets where you can't buy much of a lot for $80,000. And then there's some parts of the country, even today, you can still buy a nice house in a nice neighborhood in a good school district for under $100,000. They're out there.
Mm-hmm. And now we are, doing one for what, $240 purchase price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once we discovered this art of buying real estate this way,
and again, we're not putting down $80,000. We're not paying $240,000. So I think that I need to stop right there because that's confusing for me at first. Too. I was like, well, how are we going to get all this money? We're not going to the banks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just pay closing costs, whatever the seller needs down, and then you take over that monthly mortgage payment. And then you find someone.
Do you have to apply for that, Jenn?
No.
Do you have to get your credit checked?
You have to know what you're doing. You have to have the proper education, the paperwork. You really need to know all of the ins and outs. You can't just people are trying, but it's not something you should fly by the night of YouTube for sure.
Yeah. So without having to get a bank approval, without having to do any of these things, and we could talk about the deal we're doing actually right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have a seller has a property in in New York. They bought it about 1.5 years ago. They decided they don't want to live there. It's a turnkey house. It could be great for an Airbnb or a rental or any of those other things. It's on a few acres, really nice setting. It's close to the border of New York and like Connecticut, Massachusetts, even Vermont. They're all within probably half hour away to 45 minutes away tops, right? And the proximity to even Boston or New York City, it's a great location for this property, but you still have some land. So the sellers, they needed $10,000 to move. They've already moved to Florida. They want to recuperate some of their moving expenses because they kind of, charge some of it. So with $10,000 down, what they had agreed is if we pay both sides of closing costs, they'll let us take over paying their existing mortgage payment. So the loan stays in the seller's name. However, we're able to own the property. And this was a strategy that we didn't even know existed until 2016. And then it's one of those things where it's been going on this way for decades.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing new. It hasn't been just invented. We didn't figure this stuff out on our own. No, we found other coaches who taught us about this is a little known strategy, but this is a great way to accumulate cash flowing assets without having to go to the bank every time. And many times to even get better terms than what the bank is offering you today. And one of the great reasons today, because rates are, high 6s, 7s, 8% for a mortgage. And a lot of these sellers still have interest rates that are 2, 3, 4, even a 5% is not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the fact that these deals are still out there and the fact that there's so many of these people who have an interest rate even under 4%, it's outstanding. A lot of people either refinance or just bought a new property in the last handful of years. And when rates were so low, there's a lot of these folks who maybe have a property, but they're not wanting to sell it, but sometimes they need to.
Yeah.
So finding motivated sellers who are in a situation that we can help. And I think that was really the key. So we're doing these deals just like these folks. They've moved. They're in Florida. They have a vacant house. They don't want to make the payment. They have a nice low payment. Now, here's the strategy play is when we have to go to the closing table with the $10,000, the $5,000, $6,000 in closing costs, having to put an insurance policy on the property, you're going to have to come to the table with that much cash. However, we have people who are doing walkthroughs currently who are interested in doing rent to own. And this is why marrying these two strategies together was the key to really scaling our business. And this is what we're going to dive in today, because when we do rent to own, a lease option, they have the ability to lease the property with the option to buy. Well, our renters give us a large non-refundable option deposit for moving in. They're going to be locking up that property that we're trying to sell for the next 2 years. And they're going to have a fixed price. They're going to be able to make it home, right? They're going to be able to have their kids in the right school district now and rent until they're able to purchase it later on. So that's a great opportunity. And when you look in these areas of how many rent-to-own lease option properties are available, there's usually none.
Mm-mm.
So did we get a lot of calls when we offer that?
Just a couple.
Just a couple? What was that process like when you first got started?
I mean, it's still a lot if you pop into our Facebook page or our email system. But yeah, so you're offering an opportunity that a lot of people, are going to inquire about. And then from there, you're going to have to just ask some qualifying questions to see if they'd be a good fit for it. And so I would expect on average, especially in the first few days of posting, between 200 to 300 messages, phone calls. So get ready for that. If you're doing it properly, you have to definitely set up your postings the right way. You've got to really get it in front of a lot of people, and you've got to have the patience, since I think, in this day and age, we're very guilty of wanting instant gratification. And, I posted it once on Marketplace and I didn't find a buyer in a week. Like it didn't work for me. And then, they quickly give up. So if that's your attitude, you're right, it's not going to work for you. But if you can be patient and you can filter through and really just see, do people have some money? Are they able to move in and meet the qualifications and all of that? Like, you could really, like I said, help people out in all sorts of situations.
Yeah. And the fulfilling thing is, guys, the money's great. I get that. But when you're actually able to help another human, not only just put a roof over their head as a rental, but you're actually helping somebody turn from a renter to a homeowner. We just had another one last week. It is the coolest feeling in the world. They get to celebrate when they very first move in, just in the beginning of the renting period, because it's home to them, right? So they have that celebration then. And then when they go to finally close on it years later, in this situation, it was 6 years later until they were ready to cross that finish line. With COVID happening, the whole world got a little bit of a setback, but they still stuck to paying on time. They were fantastic the entire time, and got things back on track. Now they got to qualify for mortgage, and now they own the home. So when you leave the attorney's office and you sign all the information that you're a homeowner, guess what? You go home to the house you've already been living in. Yeah. So it's still a little bit of a mixed feeling, but they still have that second celebration. So the fact that we could help people with that too, it's a really awesome thing. But now once these folks do move in, the name of how we're able to invest is that when we buy, we want to put as little into the deal as possible, and it's got a cash flow. So that's why we focus on having deals where we're buying with just about $100 down. Some we could do more, obviously, and we have, but the ideal goal is to buy it with no money down, because this is going to make your cost of entry as low as possible, because there's hidden things sometimes you might not be aware of. When you buy a deal, you might hear $100 down and say, oh my gosh, well, I have $100 in my pocket. Right? But it's not just $100 down. So we're going to break down cost of acquisition. What I do is I'm looking at how much in closing costs. How much is the insurance policy I have to put on the property? Now, if I'm going to do rent or rent to own, I'm only going to do rent to own. I know it's going to take me probably 3 payments, 3 months before I could find that right renter. Sometimes it could take longer depending on where the property is located and how much it is. So I have to factor all of these things in there. So once I get $100 down, 4, 5, 6,000 closing costs, 3 months of payments, an insurance policy. I got to keep the air conditioning or the heat on, depending on what time of year and where it is. I got to keep the lawn mowed or the yard plowed if it's up north for our northern friends who have to deal with snow.
I know, we forget about that now.
Right?
Someone's like, I can't get in. There's too much snow in front of the door.
We live in Florida. So once we add up all of those things, $100 down. Now, maybe once you buy the house, you're going to have to paint the bathroom or do some small little things there. John usually calls like that lipstick, like it's already a nice house, but there's some small things you might want to address. $100 down could be 15, 20,000 pretty easily. So you want to keep your cost of entry as low as possible. So when your renter moves in, they've covered all of that for you, and you want to walk away up on the plus side, right? And then get that monthly cash flow. So when I see a lot of deals, and I got to give you, if you're doing this, give you some props, because I find a lot of deals out there where a seller says, yes, I will do a deal with you. Even the ones that will say, I will do it with no money down, I'm totally okay with that. But when I look at what their monthly payment is compared to what it rents for, there's negative cash flow. I would lose money every month to do that deal. And so unfortunately, on many of those deals, we have to pass on. So finding the right deal that cash flows is going to be key. Getting cost of entry as little as possible. And then with our rent to own married together, our renters give us that large non-refundable option deposit when they move in. There's many times within the first few months We are up thousands of dollars. You collect monthly cash flow. You get to write off depreciation. You get the benefits of appreciation, right? And this is how you're able to make wealth with just very little more than a strategy into it. And you could recycle that same money over and over again. So if you have some capital of your own, or if you're just borrowing it short term, I know a lot of people, they borrow money to cover the cost of entry into these deals. Well, if you do that, what's your way of paying them back? Well, this is a great way to help with that, with offering rent to own. But there's some, obviously some steps in there.
Yeah. And I think what I love about it too is that with rent to own, you're obviously getting so many benefits, but and I'm not knocking the strategy. It's just something we haven't done, but midterm or short term, like there's a lot more money that has to go into furnishing the property and like bringing it up to speed and doing all of that. Whereas with a turnkey property, I can literally hand the key over to the rent to own buyer, the tenant buyer, who's going to then just make it their home. But the caveat is it has to cash flow like a long-term rental. But I just think that it's a really underused strategy. Like, I don't think it's really talked about enough or used used it in the right manner. And it could be really such a great option for people. They just
I'll go over the deal we just did last Friday. We've got a gentleman in Florida. He owns a condo. It's a townhouse style condo, and he wants to sell. He bought another house, and he wants to sell this house.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
He just bought it. It is absolutely like turnkey.
It's super cute. Yeah.
Clean. Doesn't need a thing. It is spotless. To the point when he moves out, we're going to mail him a lockbox, because we do this virtually, guys. We're buying turnkey properties. So am I going to go to it? Nope. Am I going to walk through it myself or send Jen and the kids? Nope. Can I send somebody there to go do a walkthrough? Sure. However, he's got his phone and a lot of pictures and some videos that we've sent. It looks great. He just bought it. It looked great before he bought it. He's buying a house because he wants a yard and things like that. So we're able to buy this with $100 down.
To him.
We're going to pay a few thousand in closing costs. An insurance policy on it's going to be inexpensive. And once again, before we even close, we're going to be offering this everywhere, rent to own. So the ideal situation is to find your renter who's getting ready to give you that big old check right when you're about to give a big old check to the attorney for closing the deal. That is the key. So this is one for an example of like, why would somebody do this seller financing thing, right? Why would anybody even go for that? Well, the first example of one we're buying in New York, people have already moved. They're already gone. They got an empty house sitting in New York, right? So do they have motivation?
A little bit.
They don't want to make 2 payments, right? Who doesn't, like, if you just had 2 house payments, like how many people would be struggling, right? If your payment that you have for your apartment or house, if that just doubled, or you had to pay your neighbor's payment too, what would that do financially? It'd probably strain a lot of people. So you could see why they had some motivation there. And this gentleman, I honestly don't know why he doesn't want to list it. He's like, I don't care. I don't want to list it. I don't want to deal. I know he bought it, at a pretty high price, which is what it was going for, but he doesn't want to deal with commissions and closing costs. He just wants
people don't like people walking through their house a million times either. I feel like that's really a thing.
And that's one of his whys.
Yeah. Like sometimes you're just like, I will just walk away. You guys do your thing and let me pack my bags and be gone.
Yep. And so long as he's able to buy his house and life is good, which he's good there. Hopefully, I think we're closing like in another few weeks.
I thought you said mid-July.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
keep them all organized.
Hey, now.
Where's my board?
That's why we brought her with us today.
That's why we have Philippa. Thank goodness for her.
So I think we'll get into some questions, but I got to say, this has been the life-changing strategy that's really worked well for us. We've learned it all by taking action, but just doing it at a one step at a time. And I think that was really the key.
And I was going to say too, maybe you're listening and you're like, okay, well, I haven't learned how to buy creatively yet, but gosh, like I've got a rental that I am sick of kind of being an adult babysitter, right? Because sometimes all of us have had that one rental. And no matter what you do and how much you fix it up, something is always going on that darn thing. And I get it. That's what we sign up for as landlords, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't experience it firsthand. But the second we put our first rent-to-own buyer in, and the joy on their faces. I mean, do you remember us driving over to go get the lock boxes? We had lived, it was our first one, and we lived right there, and they were great people. And we pull up, and in the driveway, the whole family's there. They're having this a party. I don't know if they're part Italian, but like, you know, you could just, everybody was just loving life.
Everybody's out in the garage.
And they're like, come in, have a bite to eat. Look what we've already done, you know? And so like they'd all moved in and they wanted to show the bathroom off because that was brand new. And, you know, that was just so cool to me to be able to see like, holy cow, like not only that we never hear from them other than Merry Christmas or I'm ready to buy my house, but you know, they were just great people and just so grateful. And that feeling just trumps everything.
Yeah. And I gotta say the second part, which was pretty awesome, was this was our very first property that we did this with, rent to own. And
let's take us back there. Okay. So guys, it's 2017. It's summertime. Joe worked at a car dealership in the month of June. I literally fed him breakfast, ironed his shirts, sent him out the door. And he came like crawling in the door at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. just to fall asleep, to get up and do it again for like 20 days straight.
Yep.
It was great. Like even talking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was nuts. And he came through, I think around that time, we had some sort of like voicemail system set up.
Oh yeah.
It was old school, kind of wonky, but he had said he had money. And I think you ended up calling him. Yep. And then we met him at Tim Hortons because again, we're like brand new at this. We didn't really know. And they gave us their application. They put a little deposit and we're like, okay, like we're going to do this thing. And we sent them off to the attorneys. And next thing you know, we had our large non-refundable option deposit, putting that in the bank.
Well, and I remember that was $10,000. And for us, I was like, oh my gosh. Because that was a big old check you get handed to you. $10,000.
Huge. After just getting I don't really remember what we were renting it for at the time. We had just had a renter leave, and that was like maybe $1,200 a month or $1,000.
I don't even remember what it was, but I will tell you, you would only get a security deposit in first month's rent.
Didn't pay the water bill. I remember I had to pay that.
Didn't pay the water bill. And then even worse, they used the security deposit as their last month's rent. They did us dirty like that. And then they left the place like the flooring was ripped up. And, you know, so it was like, I did not love being a landlord.
I remember bringing the kids over there. So they were 2 and 4 at the time. And, you know, the whole must be nice comments, right? Here I am with my little kids. He's doing this crazy working and I'm like scrubbing and cleaning and looking back. I should have just hired somebody, but we didn't have a ton of capital in the business accounts yet. Like this was our part-time gig. We just signed up for this mentor that was, you know, an investment in ourselves. And so there was some bootstrapping going on and I rolled my sleeves up with the kids, brought them over there and I cleaned the house up and then we had to patch up the floor a little bit. So like the sweat equity is real in the beginning. And then of course, the less you do, the more you make, which is a, famous Ronism, we like to call it. But in the beginning, you do it. You gotta, do the ropes and.
Well, I remember when Brooke, she was 3 and I took her there. I had to put mulch in on my Sunday. It was my day off. And I bought all these bags of mulch and I was going to go bring them over there, put them in the back of my truck. My demo, my company truck. All right. I put my daughter and we went and we dropped off the mulch and we were cutting open the bags, laying it out. And she's at 3 years old, walking around, collecting the empty bags and stuffing them in the one empty one. And this is what we just did. We didn't know any better, but we know the job had to get done.
Yep.
And one way or another. And when you have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old at home or something like that at the time, like you just make do.
You can't always get a sitter, so you bring them along. And I see tons of, other investor families that do this. And I think the cool thing now is our kids are 9 and 11, and I'm trying to showcase it more, especially because homeschooling or we're off for the summer, but guys, we're putting them to work. They are getting on the computers, they're chatting with sellers, they're taking videos, they're doing some stuff behind the scenes. So make your kids a part of it. If you have children, don't, think that, I have to wait until they're older. No, like bring them along. They want to help. They want to be a part of mom and dad's journey. And I think I know it's a little bit of a sidetrack there, but for sure. I mean,
you know what? So I went live with Brooke today.
Yeah.
And Brooke was like, I told her, I was like, honey, there's actually some people who say that like, we want you to be on the videos. And she's like, Dad, I read that. They said that you were forcing me to be on these videos. She's like, you're not forcing me to be on these videos. She's like, I want to be on these videos. Like, she was like taken back by the comment.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable. But yeah, you're right. We get them started and they're part of the whole process. So that's what's, I think, been really great. So having the kiddos there since the beginning, getting that $10,000 check was really life-changing because the money was great, but also like proof of concept.
Yeah.
It worked. Oh my gosh, they're in there. They loved it. He was like, hey, I'm going to lay more mulch around the back, and I'm going to put in some new flower beds up front. Is that okay? I'm like, go for it. Yeah. And he's like, hey, holidays, you don't mind if like we decorate for the holidays? And we're like, it's your house. Because if you remember, I don't know if you do, part of the reason why they were so upset, they lived in an apartment complex, and during the holidays they wanted to decorate, and they said that you couldn't put up decorations.
Yeah, no lights in the window or something.
Nothing like that. So he was like, you know, I'm really big into holidays and things like that. So the fact they could have this be their own home and decorate for the holidays and have, you know, the family over, and that was like heaven to them. And now they've owned the property for years. Yeah, it worked out great. So this is the strategy, once again, that we do love. You do lose a door once in a while, and you do help turn another person into a homeowner, which is not terrible, right? Because we did help a human. However, you get helped too, because you do get a big old check.
Yep.
And if you're smart with your money and you're able to get a check and maybe turn that into a handful more deals, right? You lose one door, but you have the opportunity to gain many more. And then when you gain those many more, with our strategy of doing this lease option rent to own, when those many more move in, we're going to get large non-refundable option deposits, which we could also invest into many more properties. So it turns into, they call the snowball effect. For us Florida people, I don't know what they call that here because they don't know what snowballs are, but it just grows over time.
People know what snowballs are.
They don't know what snowballs are down here.
I don't know about that, but yeah. And I think, you know, like you mentioned earlier, you still have to be like you have to have a good understanding of financials. Like, this is not something where you just, like we always say, take the massive action, but like, you need to know that as the homeowner now, you still are responsible for having the insurance on the property, paying the property taxes. And if that property does come back to you for some reason, you need to be ready to handle that. You know, it's not like a total, oh, I put someone in and I'm just going to turn the other way. Like, no, like it's still something that you need to keep your eyes on and realize it's a business. And I think that was really key too. It wasn't a side hustle. It wasn't just something like we sort of did anymore. Like when we started doing rent to own, I know I was like all in. Like it took me to another level of like, oh, wow, like this is like a big girl business now.
Well, and I don't know how you did it, because you had,
I don't either, really, looking back.
Our son, who's just like, you know, a year too old, and he's chasing you all around. And
yeah,
you got our daughter because you're stay-at-home mom with two little ones.
Well, I think it helps. So we love the app Sideline, and it's not a sponsored or we're not affiliated, but it's just like a great way to separate the calls. So we would put yellow signs around town, and my phone number would be on some of them. And I knew that if that ringer went on and that number popped through, that was a business call. So like if I'm pulling up to the library and the kids are watching a video in the car, like I had, you know, a good 10 minutes that I could take a quick call, go through the process, because back then we didn't have it streamlined like we do today. Like today is so much easier. We have 3 questions we ask, take it or leave it, like, let's go. But I would sit there and give a little mini real estate course, and I can't tell him how many conversations, you know, that like I was stumbling through because I was still learning. But like the point was I did it, but I also didn't have a choice because you were working, and I felt obligated and responsible to be able to really help.
Well, yeah. And that's how I got you into real estate. I mean, I was like, well, you know,
because I knew it would get you out. Like, and that's, I think, the why. We always talk about that. So like you bringing me in would make you get out of the car dealership, because that, as great as it was, you know, the money that you made, but it was like literal time suck and like draining you of your health, and, you know, the fishbowl you lived in. Like the people were nice, and, you know, I get it, but at the end of the day, like we barely saw you.
Well, and you know, it's funny. A lot of people who reach out because they've heard us on podcasts, whatever, we both get messages, but the one message that I hear the most, it's like either I have a job and I like it, I have a job and I'm okay, or I have a job and I hate it. Even the ones who like it, they still want to not do it. They want to break the golden handcuffs. They want to be able to get out of their day-to-day job. And there's a series of reasons why. Like, I want my time back. I want my life back. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time with my kids, my family. I want to travel. And we all realize like, hey, life can go by like that, right? So you never know. So I think we're the generation that's maybe smart enough to know that we don't have to work 50 years in a factory and retire when you're 70 years old like they want us to.
Literally go work from anywhere. Like you've got this, you need some Wi-Fi and some determination and probably a great coach and some education, but giddy up, like make it happen.
And I take this. I mean, I don't even have the
I'm a millennial. I don't know. You have your iPad. You like to use your iPad.
I do. But that's really all you need. You just need your phone, maybe an iPad, and or laptop, and an internet connection, and you could do this all over the world. So,
and it's not a race either. You know, there's this whole movement of like, you know, the FIRE movement, and you have to retire.
Well, what's FIRE stand for, dear? Because some of our friends might not know.
Is it? I don't even know. Financially independent.
Yeah, financially
retire early.
Yeah.
Like what? I don't know. I think it's kind of a gaffe, quite honestly. Kind of like the 4-hour work week, but. You know, did you retire from the car dealership? Yes, you did. Did I retire from teaching? Yes, I did. But now we are just full steam ahead in our real estate business and helping other people achieve FIRE, I guess. But the point is, I was trying to go back to, you don't have to quit your W-2. And honestly, you shouldn't right away. Like you should really make sure you're churning deals, you're helping sellers, you've got your cash flow coming in, you've got some reserves set aside, that you have a game plan, because there's nothing worse than just like jumping, you know, and hoping for that.
I've seen some do it. And
hope's not a strategy though.
No, you definitely have to be around the right people, the right strategy in order to pull that off for sure. And I think that's why when COVID started, we did these deals. We've done remodels, we've done Burr, hated it.
And how many people would literally talk crap about it? Like it wasn't like everybody was like, "Oh yay, go Jenn and Joe."
Oh yeah, you always get that. All my coworkers and friends are like, "Don't you guys like, you know, you've got a good job and Jen's stay-at-home mom. Like, why would you want to, you know, spend your weekends in these old crappy houses? Like, wouldn't you rather be out on the lake or on the boat or doing at a park?" Doing something fun.
Why would you do rent to own? That just sounds kind of weird. And like, what does that even mean? Who would move into those properties? And are you, you know, and it's just, people don't know, right? So you educate what you can, but then you move along. And again, I always share the crab mentality. People are very uncomfortable. They try to pull you back down to where they're comfortable at. But some of us, we get out of that bucket.
Well, you know why though too? Because what I really think about is whether they understand what we're doing or not. Every seller that we've had that called us and said, "Are you really going to be able to close tomorrow? Is this too good to be true? Are you really giving me this much money tomorrow?" And every single time that we've turned a renter to a homeowner and they're like, "I can't believe this is happening. Tomorrow when I sign the paperwork, I'm now going to finally own this house," like celebrating. So when those are our wins.
Yeah.
So if people don't see that, or they don't like that or understand that, that's on them, because we're truly getting to help people. There's many times where we help people and we do it for free because, you know, we don't make a deal, but we're giving them a good direction of what to do. And there's many times where we do make money too, right? So it's a great thing to help people. And the more you can help, the better off you are. So I don't worry about what all the naysayers say. So back with my old friends, because I know probably some of you are at work right now. I know you are. I know you're watching. Hey guys, how are we doing? But either way, the point of it is, you know, when so many would say, "Why are you doing this on the side?" I would always say, like, you can never depend on your day job always being there tomorrow. And I would say this way back then, like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. And if your only source of income is from your job, that's putting a ton of risk, because if that job disappears or you no longer get to work there, something happens, your whole lifeline is on the line now. So I was always a big believer of having other sources of income coming in.
How about when you told everybody, because they were kind of like, you know, you can talk about basketball, you can talk about football, but you can't talk about real estate. So you start telling everybody like it was my thing, because that's when we decided to call it Jenn Buys. And I remember I came in, I don't think you would disclose that to me yet. And I come in and they're all like, "Hey, like we see that you're doing this real estate thing now." And I'm just like we've been doing it, but I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, because at work they're like, "Hey, just to let you know, we really can't have you talking about real estate at the dealership because, you know, it's kind of a distraction." But if you want to talk about the football games or baseball or the boxing match or the hockey match or the horse racing or the NASCAR or fishing or hunt, the gigantic list of things were totally okay. But real estate was a distraction. So I said, got it.
Well, I think because they saw the writing on the wall. Like, as we approached 2020, we had how many properties, we were picking up momentum. Maybe people were also afraid like you'd bring some of the sales guys with you. I don't know, but it was quite obvious that you were getting ready to make marshmallows.
Wow, you're going to go there. Wow. I was actually pulled into a meeting by my boss and he said, hey, you're going to get a raise. We're going to do all these things. And you're not going to leave anytime soon to start like a marshmallow factory or anything like that. That's a true story. And it's so funny because she was like, what?
I was so mad. He just got this big promotion and
they just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to quit after they just.
What you did, which is so funny because COVID happened.
2 weeks later, I'm like, no, marshmallows. I love marshmallows. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to start a marshmallow factory. I don't love them that much.
Because here I am, like, again, we just signed up for another mentoring in the fall of 2020. We're going to be full-time. Bradley's going to kindergarten, Brooks in school full-time. I am going to be talking with sellers and buying properties. And then you're going to come home. And I don't know, like, I'm so curious if COVID didn't happen, what would have happened? I
don't know if I could walk away.
I don't know if you would have. So, but either way, we just love sharing the reality of it because, like, we have had those awkward conversations and the people looking at you funny and it may seem like, oh, well, you guys, it was easy for you. It wasn't. It took a lot of just kind of like head down, stay focused, get the mentoring. So, and then once I stumbled into Instagram and Facebook communities and networking with all the right people, we have a meetup tonight. Like once we moved to Florida, we found our tribe down here. Like we've got so many amazing people that will truly support us, friends that are other investors that just like really have your back. So I don't know, if you just stay the course, the right people do show up for you.
Yeah. And this isn't something that happens overnight.
No.
You've got to be consistent. That's really the key. It's easy to lose that. The success, the level of your success is based on your discipline. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why they say only 2% of the people reach their goals. Because those are the 2% who actually are disciplined enough to keep with it, even when it's so easy to quit and you want to quit and you want to stop. The ones that are just disciplined enough not to, and to continue to forge on, continue to always build and get better. Those are the ones that you get there. So mm-hmm. it's not easy. I wish it was.
And the statistics of small businesses, like most fail 5 years. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's the case. You just got to learn the right strategies. I think that was the key.
So back to buying with the creative financing, which we talk about all the time, but then also like lining up that end buyer. For us, it's a rent to own tenant buyer. Ideally, they're going to purchase the property. Sometimes they don't. We always talk about how some things happen there. So let's go through and see some. I had a good one coming on Instagram over here. So
little Q&A time.
Yeah. What if you buy and are doing seller financing and then later you want to sell? Does the seller need to bless this? How does that work?
Well, if you buy with seller financing and then you're now the owner. So if you want to sell your house, would the seller need to bless it? Well, technically, yeah, because that would be you. So yeah, you would have to bless the sale. But you're the seller. So I guess the sometimes confusion comes in is if I buy a property, I own it, right? If I buy it with seller financing, that means the seller is no longer the owner. They're just the bank. So I don't have to ask my bank if I could sell my property, right? So probably that's more of the question is, do I have to let my seller, the previous owner, know when I am selling that house later on? I don't have to. Obviously, they're probably going to be thrilled because they're going to get the rest of their payoff, right? So that's usually an exciting time for them. So they probably will jump for joy on the phone. Just a heads up on that.
Yeah, and if there's a mortgage on the property, and you might need to get a payoff.
Yeah.
If you don't have that power of attorney, but
yep,
they're going to be excited because typically there's some money that's coming to them.
Oh yeah, and they're thrilled because we've had many of those where they get a whole bunch of money. One, he was like, "This is like the best Christmas gift ever." So it was like right before Christmas.
It was, yeah. All right, thanks for being here. Times Masquerade. Is there any max time between going under contract and finding your buyer? Is this rent to own? That's what
Yeah.
we've been
So
talking about.
with rent to own, the minute I have a deal under contract, I'm going to send that to the attorney or title company to pull a title. In the meantime, I'm going to have pictures of the property, and I want to start showcasing it right away. Right. So I got the mortgage statement if they have a mortgage, if it's a free and clear property and I'm just doing seller financing, or I'm going to buy it conventionally, however you're going to do it. If I have a deal under contract, I'm just going to offer rent to own, coming soon, available, this date and time roughly. And I'm going to start getting that marketing out there as soon as possible, because in some places you can close as little as like 7 to 10 days, like here in Florida or Texas, many of these other places. In New York, it might take 30 days or 45 days sometimes too, depending. It's an attorney state's a little bit slower. So all the states will be a little bit different. But I want to find ideally my renter to do rent to own before they even move in.
Yeah, ideally. Shout out to Caleb being here. Nicely done, talking to some sellers and some realtors.
Great job.
Yeah. Sean has this is a hot topic I'm seeing across the boards here all over Facebook, as it should be. What are your thoughts on wholesaling creative sub-2 seller finance?
So I have very mixed feelings on this. So what are my thoughts on wholesaling these creative finance deals, whether it's sub-2 or seller financing? Now, I have done it before in the past, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of it, unless there's always exceptions, right? So the exceptions are, I have to know the person buying the deal like really, 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 really well. I have to understand their business. I need to understand what their plans are with the property. There's so much more into vetting these people. It makes it exhausting almost, because I want to go so deep to make sure that I'm finding the right buyer for this, because you never know. You could be messing with somebody's credit on the line and all of these other things, and it could be a complete disaster. So where do I think it's good? Maybe somebody who's not very experienced talk to a seller. They recognize the seller's in a situation. They recognize maybe this deal would work for seller financing, and you bring that deal to myself and Jenn or somebody like us. Or maybe you're just not equipped to buy the deal, but you could bring it to somebody like us who would love to find a great deal and would pay you a reward, a finder's fee for that deal. And knowing that you're going to turn over that deal to somebody like us, or there's many others,
yeah.
Right. That's really, I think, the key. If I'm going to assign someone a deal, a seller finance or a subject to deal or a wrap, whatever you want to do, and they say it's my first deal and I'm learning on this one, like that's a big red X. Like absolutely not. So you need to make sure they've got plenty of cash reserves. It's their actual money. What do they do for their job? How much money do they make? I mean, because what happens is if the deal goes backwards, do they have the ability to still make the mortgage payment even if you don't collect rent? Because here's the heads up. If you're going to be tying somebody else's credit on the line, you're obligated. You need to make that payment regardless if you're collecting rent or not. So don't do anything dumb with the property, first of all. And number two, make sure you're going to set yourself up for success. So this is why I love rent to own, because our renters, when they move in, we could collect a $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 non-refundable option deposit. Our renters have some skin in the game. We're going to cash flow per month too. If somebody gives me $20,000 to move into one of my properties and they stop making payments and I have to get them evicted, you better believe I have to make those payments. Where am I going to get the money from? Probably that 20 grand they gave me. And maybe I don't spend all of it and I keep some of it in reserve. It's probably a good idea. Don't you think, everybody? Yes, Joe, we do. I think it's a great idea, right? So having cash and all these things are, I think, extremely important. Find the right buyer. Don't wholesale it to people who don't know what they're doing, who aren't formally trained, who've already done these deals successfully for many years, because I could think of many people who are amazing. And if I had a deal in their area and they wanted to buy it, I would feel comfortable knowing that they're going to do the right thing. But those people are far and few in between.
And sometimes they don't have the right know-how of how to set up the insurance properly, and what if XYZ happens. So it's just important to really know, like you said, vetting them.
Like if I found a deal in Jacksonville, Florida, and Ron the Grand called me, it was like, Joe, I totally want this deal. It's in my backyard. It's my neighbor's house and I want it. He would probably do it all right.
I would think so.
Right? Okay. So something like that would make me feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And it would have to be something like that.
But it's people who are collecting them like little game pieces and then not making the payments and just.
Oh yeah, there's
some shenanigans going on.
There's a lot of things that can be set up for disaster. So.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian.
A lot of work. You just got to put in the work, put in the time, keep going.
And if you're coming to our meetup tonight, we'll see you later.
Yeah, tonight. Nicole, I'm glad you're finding this of value.
Nicole said this is all brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I forget, listeners.
Yay.
Is the sub 2 in owner financing in one contract for the initial buy side?
I guess that depends on your agreement. There's many agreements that you could use. When we first got started, we just used the standard county agreement that was good for our county that all the realtors were using.
Mm-hmm.
And in that agreement, there was a spot where we could outline, there was a seller finance or subject to addendum. Some agreements, depending on what state and where they are, have it built into, page whatever, and it's all in there too. So they're usually the same. There's usually a couple of boxes you might have to check or write some type of disclosure. However, if they do have a mortgage, you're more likely going to do a wrap or a subject to. And if there is a free and clear property, it will only be owner financing. So based on if it has a mortgage or not, will determine what box you either check or what you write in there.
And disclaimer, would you do a sub 2 or a wrap?
I'm only doing a wrap. I only buy on wrap, and then I rent with rent to own. That is our strategy.
Through and through. We've never sold on a wrap.
No.
Thank you, Whitney. I'm glad that you're able to stop by today. And Yevon, Gregory, you've been with us for a while. Yes, we just try to share. We're open books here. What's working, what's not.
Yeah.
Lacey, good to see you. Hello. Keep going. And post it back. All right. I think that was all the questions. Wow, you guys were quick today.
Love it. So once again, guys, if you want to learn more about this, we go live every single Tuesday, but make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook, and all of the podcast channels, Spotify, Apple, we're all on there. So if you would love to give us a 5-star review, we would love that back from you. So if we're doing a great job, giving you guys a lot of value, please go do that if you can. It helps our channel tremendously. But once again, stay tuned. We love answering your questions and going live every single week. And I got a little gift for everybody. If you're just looking to get started and you're trying to figure out how do I get started, we've talked about many times on our podcast previously how you can for free and how to do it easily. Easy that anybody can do it. So on our website, creativefinanceplaybook.com, we have a spot where you can get our script that our team and all of our clients use. It's the same exact one, guys. The 10 questions we ask every seller and our marketing strategy of how to generate off-market leads for free. Once again, it's so easy. Anybody could do it. So we give away the game for free because we want you to do it. You need to talk to sellers. If you don't have leads coming in, you don't have a business. We give that all away and even what questions to ask them. Because let me tell you, when you post the way we're talking about on that lead generation, people are going to actually reach out to you, and they're going to be, and you're going to get a lot of people sometimes. So the name of the game is knowing what question asks. We give that to you. Get started. Take some action. Even if it's just talking to some sellers and generating some leads, messaging some questions, it is that easy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if you want to learn more about how to do that and how, if you want to get into the neat details of that, creativefinanceplaybook.com, you could book a call with me or just call or text me. My cell phone's scrolling across the bottom, but if you're driving, don't pull over. It's 585-207-2240. That is my actual cell phone number. I will call you back or answer your phone call if you text me or call me.
Yeah.
Yay. So stay tuned next week, guys. We got a special gift for you. Got some treats. We got some great stuff going on next week. We cannot wait. And thanks, Tim.
You two are awesome.
Well, right back at you.
All right.
Cool. If you are in the Tampa, Sarasota, Bradenton area and you're watching this live, We're having our meetup tonight. So there's a link on our Facebook. Come join, and we would love to see you live in person. If not, we will see you next week. See you guys.
Bye.